here. All right, it appears that we are live now. The software is running. Everything is working. Hello to the chat room. Can you guys hear me? I hope. And Paul, if you'll say something just to make sure they can hear you as well.
1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Testing 1, 2, 3.
I hope that's the case. I'm going to assume it is. Yep. They're saying everything is good. So that's great. Welcome to Synthesizer Talk or Synthesizer Chat. I don't know what you want to call it. It doesn't really matter. It's me, Richard Nicol, founder, Pittsburgh Modular guy, general person stuck at home. And today I have with me, who is also strangely stuck at home, his home, not mine, Paul Soulsby, the director, the founder of Soulsby Synthesizers, who was kind enough to take some time out of his, I'm sure, very busy schedule, hopping around from town to town, to come in and hang out with us tonight and chat with us. So, Paul, thank you for joining us. I really appreciate it.
That's all right. It was tough because I had to get all the way from that bit of desk over there to this bit of desk here, and I wasn't sure if I was going to make it in time.
Well, it was close. We had a tough, close call there at the beginning, but it worked out. I'm glad you were able to make it from one side of the desk to the other. I'm glad you're able to join us today. I talked to you, I think the last time that I talked to you was at Super Booth last year. I didn't see you at NAMM. So it was Super Booth, and we had some fantastic conversations at Seabase over the course of the event, which was great. It was really. I wish
I could remember any of them there.
It
all gets a bit blurry all those Super Booth days.
Well, that's just a testament to the quality of the conversation, I think.
I think so. Yeah. Yeah.
I think we could just leave it at that. But anyway, so I reached out to you because I'm curious because you approach things a lot differently, and you work sort of in a different medium than most people that I sort of I interact with regarding synthesizers, because you work on the digital side, and I sort of live in the analog world. But I'm fascinated by the digital side, especially the sort of lo-fi digital stuff where you're sort of really celebrating what makes, I think, digital really interesting. So tell me a little bit about, we're just going to dive right in here. Tell me a little bit about sort of what got you, take me back to the very beginning. What got you into synthesis and synthesizers, and what was the spark that sort of said, now this is something I want to learn a little bit about?
Well, I guess my first synthesizer was a Casio MT45. There would have been a point in my life where I said that's not a synthesizer, it's a home keyboard. But I think they're all synthesizers. You know, it synthesizes sound. It's a synthesizer.
Oh, absolutely.
So that was like my 7th birthday present. I've still got it, and yeah, it's a great little synthesizer. And then I think in the 90s I upgraded it to a sort of wavetable PSR, and I couldn't. It just sounded rubbish compared to everything I was listening to on records. And so I said to my friend Ollie, I remember saying to him, well, why does this sound so rubbish? It just sounds nothing like the synthesizers I'm listening to. And he said, you need an analog synthesizer. And then and I happened to be in my music shop in my town in Abingdon, Modern Music of Abingdon, which is no more. They happened to have that Juno 60, actually. That was my 18th birthday present.
Wow.
Yeah, I just played with that for months. I just thought it was incredible, absolutely incredible. And I still do. It's one where they've got, it's a great one to learn as well when you don't know anything about it, because you know they've carefully put all the parameters so everything kind of works. And it's pretty logically laid out. I think that was a good one to learn on. I think if it had been anything more difficult, I'd have just got annoyed with it given up.
Well, I think the nice thing about the 60 too is it kind of, I have a 60 as well, and I don't have very many vintage synths, but the Juno 60 is sort of has a special spot in my heart. And I think one of the reasons why you're right, it is a great synth to learn on, is it always kind of sounds good, and because there's some presets there, you can sort of bang around and pick something that's close to what you're looking for, and then just start, moving sliders and it'll change it, but it never really gets bad. It always has that sort of Roland Juno sound, and it always sounds pretty good. And I think you're right. So it is a great synthesizer to learn on because it's not frustrating. You might get a sound that's not what you were hoping for, but it's never going to be like, oh, this thing sounds terrible.
Yeah, I think, I just would play on it for hours and push it. Then eventually you start pushing the thing, all the parameters in different, as far as they can go. And actually, it was after that I then started at uni, and my uni has a mini Moog, and so you'd have to book time in the music studio to be able to get to use it. And I just booked the time to just use that. In fact, I did one project where I did every single sound on the mini Moog. I sampled drums, and I put things through it using the audio in. But that also was another big jump up, because I think after I used the 60, I was like, oh, I know how to do analog synthesizers now. I was like, oh, it's all right, I know how to do them all. I know how to, I've done a Juno 60, that's it, it's done. Again, and you play with them anyway, and it's like, whoa, suddenly, wow, you can like start modulating, the audio frequencies, and creating these incredible different textures by doing modular. I've been getting rid of. Have you got the free Mini Moog iPad app? That's like,
I did. I downloaded it whenever they offered it for free last week or a couple weeks ago, and I've been playing with it anytime I grab my iPad. So in the evenings when I'm sitting and I have the TV on, I'm always sort of poking at it.
Oh, I have to swap some patches. I've been saving off patches, so I'll have to send you some of them, because it's got a share thing on there for sharing them.
Okay, yeah, I haven't saved her. I just sort of tweak it and then close it and sort of move on. I play with that and the Korg Gadget, which is another.
Oh, I think that's the other. Yeah, was that the one I got? It is. I think that is the Gadget, isn't it? Oh no, K-Oscillator is the one that they gave away free. Okay, I'll check out the Gadget. I'll see what that one's like. Yeah, so the Mini Moog, that again was a couple more years of just being completely blown away with all the possibilities of that synth. And then the next one was I bought a Nord Micro Modular, and then suddenly, you work out what can be patched into what and what all the options are, and then you really start to get on top of things. And then it kind of like, exploded from there. I was getting different synths left, right, and center. But in those days, I was very analog only. That was late early noughties. I was really down on digital. It's all be analog. Got to be analog.
I had a
since I now do 8-bit digital synths.
I had the Nord Micro Modular as well, and that was another one for me that I really didn't understand at that point what modular synthesizers were. Even when I bought it, I don't think I really made the connection that this is even though it's, the name is Nord Micro Modular, it never really clicked to me that that's what I was doing. I had a vague understanding of how it worked, but at that point I was mostly just sort of searching from patch to patch, finding something close to what I wanted. And then I would go in and build a sequencer or something to make a drum loop out of it. And I would just sample it in. And that's how I used the Micro Modular. But after a while, I was always like, you know what? It doesn't really matter how complicated I make the patch. All the sounds kind of sound the same. And I sort of lost interest in the Micro Modular. But I loved the idea of it. But the sound, after a very short while, I don't think it did a whole lot for me.
Yeah, I think it became more of a thing of like squeezing every last percent out for me. In the end, I used to do, I did one where it was a drum kit and a bass and a lead all in the one patch. So I could actually do an entire song accompanied, with the one thing.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think now going back on it now, it's probably not going to sound as good as other options out there because it's all emulation. But I still I think it really helped for me to understand the idea of different signals. A control voltage, an audio signal, and a digital signal. And I still wish I always said if I did real modular, I would very carefully stick to my red, blue, and yellow patch cables for all the different signal paths. But it doesn't seem to have happened. I seem to now just grab for any patch lead that's lying around, and if it reaches, then I'm happy. That'll do. So yeah, no, I used it quite a lot, and I also took it on tour. I took the Juno 60 and the Micro Modular on tour. I had those on tour. Actually, yeah, I used to do a lot of sounds on the Micro Modular, just because it was so versatile. You could always approach, as long as it was monophonic, you could get pretty close to what was on the record. Even if it was a totally different synth, you could, with enough faffing, you could get fairly close. And there was and the Juno 60 was just good for, because it was so quick. And there was one gig I did where I couldn't get the Micro Modular to come out, and I went around. It was in a rack, one of those rack cases, and I put my hand around the back to reset the power. I accidentally pulled the MIDI lead out, and I was like, I couldn't find it. I was like, we had to start the song. So I said, I've pulled the MIDI lead out. I'd never get it back in. In the end, I ended up using the Juno 60 for both. And on the fly, I would load in the real patch the Juno 60 was supposed to be doing at one point, and then go into manual mode and just have all the sliders, in, approaching a sound that was the Micro Modular sound. That song, like, I'll never forget that song and how quickly I was like having to do that.
Wow.
So yeah, they got a lot of use those things. A lot.
That's amazing. So that's your early days in synthesis, and I could see we have very similar paths, obviously, in the early days. So at what point did you sort of turn, and when did the idea for Soulsby synthesizers become a thing? What got you into the lo-fi, the sort of 8-bit stuff?
Well, I did. So I was a recording engineer for a few years, and then I went freelance, and obviously I had my band as well. And then I, which is trademark-online.co.uk, should you ever be interested. It still exists, the website. Anyway, yeah, we did. I did that, and then I got a job working in the TV industry doing computer software for game shows. And there was some game shows that required standalone hardware. So we were like, oh, there's this new thing called an Arduino. Shall we use that? And I just learned how to program the Arduino for that. And then I gave up doing the TV work full time. I went freelance again, and literally the day after I went freelance, I just played about with I played about with an Arduino, and I was like, oh wow, it can make sound. And then that was it. It was just the most sort of natural progression, bizarre progression. Just stopped working in the TV industry, had an Arduino sat there, next day playing with it, making it make sound. And that was it. It just went off from there. Just, it was just incremental. It was like, oh, now can we add an interface? Oh, now can we create other sound engines? Oh, can it do sampling? That kind of thing. So yeah, that was 2013 that I started it.
Wow, and then your first product was at the Atmegatron?
It was, yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So that was 2014. And then I did the kit version, the mini Atmegatron, which was a little DI kit version. Then the module version, which was the Ossitron. That was 2016 or 17. Maybe it was 17. I think the official launch was 17. And then the last three, well, since I think it was since end of 2017, I started work on the new project, and it's still ongoing, and it's nearing completion. I've actually got circuit boards, final version circuit boards. These are the final edition. That's the control PCB. That's the final version. That's the sound card, the sound module. That's basically an Atmegatron, just okay. There. This is sort of then. I wanted to check. So we finished the CAD as well for the case. That's ready to go. I might be able to do a screen share and then you can see it. I don't know. I'll maybe save that for a bit. I don't know if that kind of thing's going to work or not. Anyway, so that was me. That's a bit of plywood to test that all the holes in the CAD line up with the holes in the PCB, because I thought I'm not going to spend thousands on making cases only to find that the holes don't line up. So yeah, that's a test for that. So that's going to be the Atmegatron 2, obviously in a real case. No, sure. I'm not just going to sell that. And that will be it's 2 Atmegatrons, but it's expandable. Got screens, a much better interface. You can change. It's got built-in sequencer. You can change sound engines internally without. You don't need the programmer cable. And it's just been a massive job. It's just basically most of those PCBs are on their 3rd revision now. I think I had the first version in 2018. For Super 2018 was the first version. Second version was last year, and then there was going to be. I was working around the clock before we went into lockdown, trying to get ready for the final version for this year. Mm-hmm. And it was a bit precarious whether it was going to happen or not. But as soon as it became clear it wasn't going to happen, it was almost like I could just. And it was good that it did, because there were a couple of holes that got changed on the metalwork. So only little changes like diameters and things, not massive changes. So I saved myself a bit of bother by being able to just look at things properly. So yeah, that's what I've been up to.
Well, that's good. Yeah, it's a shame that Super Booth was canceled, but if it allows us to slow down as designers and builders and take a breath and double check our work, so to speak, instead of sort of plowing ahead just to make sure that we get that hit of media and get the hit of just debuting it to the world at the best synth show there is. I think that's a good thing. I know for us, as soon as Super Booth was canceled, we said, you know what, we're just not going to do anything. We're not going to announce anything. We're just going to sort of lie low. And now, we're going to ride out the storm here, so to speak, and see what happens. We have some sort of other stuff happening in the background right now, but for us, it's really just about, okay, let's take this time and focus on the designs again. Maybe we do a revision so that, what would have been V2 is what we ship the first time type of idea. Because I felt, maybe you do too, just trying to push against this, it didn't make any sense. So I've spent a lot of my time doing stuff like this, where I just, chat on the internet with people, or, sit and patch in the evenings, because it seems like it's more productive, strangely, right now, and more important right now to just hang out and be engaged with the community than worry about all this other stuff that, that other stuff was going to happen anyway, but it can wait. For me, I feel like it can wait a little bit. So going back now to you, because we talked about sort of the very beginning, and then we talked a little bit about, you showed the new design a little bit, but I want to talk a little bit more about the Atmegatron, because it was sort of a revelation for me, because the synth came out and I had heard it and I had played with one, and I thought it really sounded really interesting. And I had no idea at that point that there was an Arduino in it. Apparently I had never gone to your website back then to check it out. I just thought it was a really cool sounding sort of lo-fi digital synth. And now that I've done Arduino development on myself here for Pittsburgh Modular on the just more like sequencing and MIDI side, I'm amazed at how much code and how much functionality you were able to pack into these things.
I mean, that's what I enjoy is the and to be honest, the very first version of the Atmegatron wasn't that well written version. The very first version that shipped, and I've now updated it. I mean, most of them now have a much better version on there. But I think it was a case of I think I made sure that at the end of every day I played with the synth to see what I thought of it, to use it. And I do think that's something I need to do more of. I do it from time to time, but I need to remember that's why that is the most important thing, is what it's like to use. Very easy to get like absolutely bogged down in some little detail that you're trying to fix, and then you forget to use it. But I think that was it's hard. It's really hard to remember exactly what my. I mean, the hardware inside isn't that complicated at all. It really is just the chip and some amps and a filter and some amps and just nothing really. Power regulation. It's very, very simple. Hence that is that's one Atmegatron, but it's also got all the circuitry for CV and audio input as well. It's got a whole lot more on than Atmegatron. No, I think it was the case. I was just more interested to try different filter algorithms, and I was just fascinated to see what sounded good. It was literally, if I thought it sounded good, then I went with it. And I just did that. I had the whole thing done in about maybe 9 months. I think I had most of the software in by 6 months, and then I didn't really understand anything about hardware at all at that point. I had it all in a. I wonder if I can get it down. Or is it up there somewhere? It might just be a live stream of a man falling off a ladder. I don't know if that's a good idea or not.
Given the current circumstances, I would recommend staying as healthy and safe as possible.
Yes, yeah. I'll leave the prototype up there. Anyway, So I had drawn the panel art. I obviously done the PCB. I'd drawn the panel art, and I had a box that I wanted it to be fitted in, and I sent it. I got someone to look at it, and they said, "Oh, you're going to need a CAD design." I hadn't put any screws in it to hold the PCB in or anything. I think it's going to be just like a zero gravity box where the PCB just sort of floated inside at the right level. So then that's something where I get a freelancer to do the CAD. I just figure you can't do everything yourself. It's what he does, and he puts in a lot of good thoughts. All the let me just grab this. This is all stuff that he did. That's the case of the new one.
Okay.
He's been on all these videos. I can't put the synth in anymore because all the holes are different on the back. The PCBs don't fit in the cases anymore, unfortunately. And he came up with all these different ideas, and I mean, he's not from a synth background. He's from a design background. So he takes on it could be anything. It could be a toaster or something, and he'll get commissioned, and then he'll just make a CAD design for a toaster that he finds and think will look good. So that was definitely, it was money well spent, and he's done a good job. And we're just getting these final CAD designs ready for the new ones. They're pretty much ready to go. The last list of jobs, like 5 things, 5 small jobs ready. And then that was about 9 months, and then there was a period of all the kind of CE testing, FCC testing, all that kind of thing. And I really got bogged down in it. I didn't really understand it. And luckily I found a company that did understand it and did what was a basic test it's not the full paperwork and everything, but it's to test that it's not going to burn the house down. It's not going to interfere with your TV or anything. And basically gives you the confidence to go ahead with it. So I did that for quite a long time. Then 2014, sorting the packaging out, things like that. I didn't know anything about any of that. Then press, I randomly, so I had one finished prototype. I'd got the cab done.
Mm-hmm.
I'd got the box made up, the polystyrene inserts, the power supplies. I got everything and just one unit. And I thought, I should do some press. Phoned up Sound on Sound. It's like, I've made a synth. You wouldn't be interested in looking at it. And they're like, yeah. I was like, they wanted my only one.
Of course.
And yeah, I just couldn't believe it. It was amazing. I couldn't. I never thought it'd ever get. I didn't think it'd be in a magazine or anything like that. It was I couldn't believe it. It was so yeah, and then that was that. March 2014 it was launched, and that then sort of just been snowballed ever since, really.
Nice. And you've made all of the code for the Atmegatron, and it looks like most of your stuff available as open source where you can just download it from GitHub. What was the sort of thought process behind that? Was there a reason you felt like you're giving back to the community, or you were hoping for, people to sort of take it and do something else interesting with it, or what was the reasoning behind it?
I think there was, I think it was a bit that I like the idea that someone might do their own engine, and it never really happened because what happened was I started off with it as a plain Arduino sketch that you could just open in Arduino, and I think if I'd left it as that, it might have happened because it was very easy to understand what was going on in the sketch and things. But I then migrated it all to Atmel Studio and did lots of custom things and lots of tricks and things that you might not, it's not just the Arduino library now. It's in fact virtually no Arduino library at all anymore. It's done in more efficient ways, and I suspect that's alienated people from. I've had people, maybe one a year try and get into it, but that it doesn't really go anywhere. I think it was one of those things. I put it online in the hope that it might happen, and as I developed it myself, it became less and less something that other people would be interested in, because you probably look at it and go, well, why is that like that? I don't know what that does. And I know if I was doing it to someone else's project, I'd just go, I'd be like that.
I think it was a quality gesture nonetheless. I think just having these resources out there for people to be able to, even if, they don't end up building on it, even if they can just take a look at it, maybe learn a little bit from it, and then write their code based on maybe that little bit that they learned. I think that's a positive thing as well. I've been trying to go through and open source some of our old hardware designs, our analog circuits. And what I've found is the process of just drawing them up in a way to give them away is really time consuming and a lot harder than I thought it was going to be. So the process has been a lot slower. I think I've put up 2 so far, but I had a list of 15 or 20 modules that I was going to put up there. It's just finding the time to do it is difficult. So I applaud you for your efforts, because I know it's one thing. And as a programmer, I know it's one thing to write code for yourself to accomplish what you're trying to do, but it's another thing to write it cleanly and clearly, and then put it up for scrutiny from other people. So
yeah,
nice.
I did have one person notice that some of the code didn't. I'd forgotten to put the open source license text on it and things like that, which was really nice because I was like, oh wow, thanks for pointing that out. So I was quick to update that. But yeah, I think some people might find it interesting. It's things like the 8-bit filter in the Ossitron, which I've got here. Actually, I might be able to plug that into there. There we go. Turn it down a bit. Is that too loud?
No, it's fine.
Then that's the that is the filter. Let's check that. Oh, there we go. So that filter, it's the same that was on the Atmegatron, but because it's modular, it has to be incredibly quick. Because if you've got an analog envelope going into it, and say it's also got another analog envelope doing the amplitude, doing VCA, if that filter sweep happens, happens even 10 milliseconds after the audio, the amplitude, the VCA is closed, it's over. It sounds rubbish. So I had to completely rewrite that. It used to be using floating point maths, which on an 8-bit processor is scary. I mean, it eats up processor time by tens, hundreds compared to doing fixed point maths. So I converted the difference with fixed point maths is you have accuracy issues. That's what I'm saying. So floating point's just doing it on a calculator. Fixed point, it's a lot faster, many times faster, but you have accuracy issues. They ended up creating a spreadsheet, Excel spreadsheet, of every parameter used in the algorithm for the filter, and then did it once with all the options for fixed point, and then another with the original floating point, and then looked at the percentage inaccuracy of all those parameters, and then slowly honed it down until it sounded as pretty much as good as the floating point one.
Wow!
By finding all the right ways of doing the fixed point. It's where you put the decimal point essentially in fixed point. So I don't know. One day I hope somebody actually finds that bit of code and goes, oh wow. or I could just buy a processor that is faster, and then I can just use the floating point. And the processor will probably cost less than the 8-bit one. But anyway, try not to think about these things too much. I enjoy doing these things where it's like making old 8-bit processors, stuff like that. I think it's good.
Well, that's the beauty of what we do, is that we get to work, as small, designers and sort of artisans, so to speak. We pick the medium that we are interested in working in, and that's what we do. And that's the beauty of this sort of cottage synthesizer industry, is you can pick the medium. If, I like to work in analog, so that's what I'm working in. And you like to work in these little old 8-bit things. And that's fantastic because it allows you to sort of stretch out and push them way further and do more interesting things, because that's what's making you smile. And I love that.
Yeah.
I love that that's sort of how this industry and the boutique side, the sort of cottage industry side of this has gone, is everyone is really digging in now to the areas that really scratch that itch for them. And it's wonderful that we can do that.
I think that's what people, what makes all the smaller companies unique. I think there's very little point in doing generic synthesizers, stuff that's safe. There's a lot of stuff that's very safe and very cheap out there, and all we'd do would be something that would be similar but much more expensive. So we have the that's where we can excel, is that we can literally do something really niche that no one, the bigger companies wouldn't touch with a barge pole, but then just hone it down and make it a product that's sort of that we find interesting, and hope that other people will as well. And it probably won't get the millions of sales or anything that a safer product would, but I think it's more important that it's out, that the variety is out there. No one wants just like every company making the same synth. That would be boring.
No, and I believe, and I say this all the time, that I feel like what we're trying to do is add something to the mountain of synthesizer knowledge. So I feel, when I'm designing a product, I don't want to just say, okay, what have we done? Let's just reorganize those parts and come out with something and call it new. I really feel like we have to use our research and our development time to do new things, stuff that no one else has done, because if we don't, what's going to make our product, which is going to be, 3 times as expensive than something these big guys are doing, interesting at all? So I think we have to innovate, but that's the exciting part, is we get to do and we get to push the specific tools that we've decided to use as far as we can push them and do interesting things.
Yeah. I think that's definitely, that's what we need. What I think all the companies need to focus on. It's interesting because it's making me think of Super Booze, and you go round and every company is sort of doing their own little thing. It's funny. There's a lot of people, I say, I make synthesizers, and most people say, first of all, a lot of them say, what's a synthesizer? Is that like a keyboard?
Yeah.
And if they know what a synthesizer is, most people are like, is there enough people out there to buy it, that are interested in it? And then you think about Super Booze, and not only just synthesizers in general, but all these little niches. There's loads of people, absolutely loads of people. So yeah. So you working using this time to work on new stuff as well, then, or are you?
We have we are working on this time to do, and we had basically a whole new product line, not ready to go to production, but pretty close. But we have since reevaluated, and now we're going back and saying, okay, let's focus on the interesting bits, and how can we sort of distill maybe this entire product line that we were working on down to what are 2 or 3 sort of essential bits from that. What made this 15 things that I was working on? What are the 2 or 3 aspects that really made it interesting and really made them unique? And let's focus on those, and let's see what we can come up with that is sort of laser focused on that. Sort of a different approach. And this is kind of how I design in general. I typically start, because I'm not an engineer. I have Michael Johnson doing the engineering. I'm more of the pie in the sky guy, so to speak. So what I end up doing is I will sit down with Michael, and we'll discuss sort of what we're interested in sonically and what we're interested in sort of academically in researching, and we'll sort of go our separate ways, and then come back and say, okay, this is sort of the genres that we're thinking about. And I will then draw up, a full instrument or bits of an instrument or 6 different versions of different instruments. And then we'll say, okay, out of these, what are the parts that are interesting, and where are we innovating here? Let's focus, let's distill it down to that. And then I'll say, okay, and I'll go away and I'll come back with 2 or 3 new instruments or, modules or bits and pieces, and say, okay, here's what I've got, and here's the ideas behind them, and here's sort of the technology behind them that makes it work, and here's what I need you to work on. And we'll sort of slowly, so for every product we come out with and every product I design, there's been 30 revisions of it beforehand. So a lot of it happens on paper, and a lot of it happens going back and forth with Michael and I, and Michael breadboarding various things, and then me either saying, oh, that's amazing sounding, or, oh, that was absolutely terrible. But a lot of the stuff you gotta drudge through the stuff that doesn't sound interesting to get to the stuff that's really special. So that's kind of the approach that we take. So we did have a more general Eurorack line in the pipeline, but over the last 6 months, we've sort of reassessed what we want to do, and we didn't start from scratch, but I said, let's look at this a little bit different ways. So for us, Super Booth, we weren't really going to be showing anything new anyway. We went to NAMM this year, so I had 2 things that I showed at NAMM. And
what was it like this year? Because the previous year was quite quiet, wasn't it? A lot of them companies had dropped out 2 years ago. I didn't really follow it this year. Was it more people back again, or?
It felt like there was a good amount of people there. It wasn't a lot of the companies that had left. The big companies stayed away again this year, but a lot of the small companies found a way to come back. So it was a nice community that we had in the NAMM building itself, and I thought it was pretty good. All the media for us going to trade shows, going to Super Booth, going to NAMM really comes down to, can we talk to our dealers and can we talk to the press? Because you don't see enough artists there, certainly not at NAMM, where they're not really supposed to be any artists there really, but there's a ton. But you don't see enough customers or artists to make it worth your while to go. It's much easier, a better way for me to spend my money if I want to talk directly to my customers is just turn on the video cameras and make a demo video. Because that way I know I'm interacting with the people that are interested in purchasing or learning about my products. So for me, going to trade shows are about, can I talk to my dealers and sort of catch up and figure out what's going on? And can I talk to the press? And, and can I get the word out there beyond what I could normally do on my own? And for that, if those were my goals, then this year NAMM was very successful. I did a lot of businessy stuff, behind the scenes, boring business stuff. And I did some dealer stuff, and I did some press stuff. And I thought it was a great show for us. It was absolutely worth going back. Now we did it at a level that we went in as bare bones as we could go. In the past, we had taken large, 4 foot by 8 foot crates full of gear, and we would have big 10 by 20 booths. This year, we went in with the smallest booth we could get, and the amount of gear that we showed was based on how much we could fit in our carry-on luggage.
Oh yeah, I know that. I know that feeling.
Because the return on investment for us really is the interaction with dealers and interaction with media. I don't feel like we need a big flashy booth. We're not trying to get more dealers. We were just trying to interact with the ones we already had. So I didn't feel like, hey, we need to spend all this money on big and flashy. We just sort of went in small and had a good time, did what we had to do. And I thought it was a success, especially now that we're not going to get to go to Super Booth. The fact that we got to interact with these people at all was a positive thing.
Yeah, it was good to get it in whilst you could. So, we were just about to do the Bristol Modular. That was the first one up when it all kicked off. And that really looked like it might go ahead. It was so close, but in the end, wasn't going to be possible. But I can't remember exactly. I think it was just 1 week before. Was it the week? I can't remember exactly the timing, but it couldn't go ahead, unfortunately. So yeah, I did a little synth meet in London in January though. That's quite nice. We do little synth meets in London, which are quite good. But yeah, everything else, whether it be synth or anything, it's all cancelled now. Nothing in the calendar as yet.
Yeah.
Hopefully that changes later this year.
I know I had one day a few weeks ago, 3 or 4 weeks ago, where over the span of 3 hours on like a Thursday or Friday afternoon, every travel, and I had 4 or 5 bits of travel for the rest of the summer. So basically every bit over the course of 3 hours was canceled. I just email after email. Every email that came in was, hey, this thing you were doing, you're not doing that anymore. Which is disappointing because a lot of them were like just speaking gigs where I would go to a university and give a talk and then give a performance. And give some demos, and one of them was going to be really fun because it was going to be a talk and then a performance with the students, which I was really looking forward to. So it's hopefully we get to do it next year, but there's a little things like that are sort of beyond these large scale shows that also miss out on. There's a local trade school here in Pittsburgh that I was working with the students. They were building some music from outer space kits.
Oh, right.
And they were gonna do that and perform with these kits. Then they were gonna build them and then do a performance at the local Carnegie Museum. And so we had got to the point where I'd gone in and I was speaking to them a lot about avant-garde for performance and experimental performance, and what that meant and what the goals are for those types of performances, and maybe how to approach them and how what you should be trying to get your listeners interested in. And so it was really interesting to watch these kids sort of open up to sort of a style of music that maybe they didn't really understand at all. And of course, now their performance is, the school's done for the year, so their performance was canceled. They never got to finish their music from outer space kits. So it's these little things that aren't, these necessarily large shows that are canceled that you realize, oh, these were the ones that I found that were the most, they meant the most to me, and they were I was the most excited about that I were disappointed. But again, hopefully again next year we can pick up on this stuff where we left off and get to see the kids go make a lot of noise in a really big space.
Those soldering things and little kits are great for kids because they actually, it's almost better than just putting a modular synth in front of them because they're making it, they're building it. Often find at shows, when the kids come around, they're totally cool with playing on the keyboard if there's anything that resembles a keyboard or a BeatStep Pro, but very difficult to get them to push buttons and twiddle the knobs. I'm like, why didn't you do that one? They're like, no, I just want. Whereas if they actually solder it and build it, I think they have a bit more confidence. Maybe it's just years of being told, don't touch that, don't leave that alone. They automatically assume they're not allowed to touch any of the knobs or anything on the modules. I don't know. But yeah, I've done a few different soldering things with kids, and they've always gone really well. Actually, the one I did a couple of years ago was in a mini Atmegatron one, and it was like it was a it was adults as well. It wasn't. It just happened that there was a large, it was about 50-50 adults and kids. First person to finish soldering it must have been about 10 or 11 though. Absolutely blitzed it. Like I was doing a bit of explanation, but he just went straight ahead, finished it in no time at all. Probably quicker than I could have made it. And it worked first time. He did a really good job with that.
That's definitely very nice. It's interesting, and I think you're right. It helps to get the kids to build the things, because then they're not, it's not a precious thing. It's something, that they're not, it's a tool then, and they're not afraid to use it. And I think that's a big hurdle, but it's also a hurdle then to give them this tool and say that now go and stand in front of your peers and in front of, a bunch of people and try to make art with it. That's another completely different hurdle that, but again, is you just sort of explain to them, they're like, all it does is go, and I'm like, yeah, but how does that make you feel when you hear that? They're like, oh, it makes me angry. And this, I'm like, well, that's how it's going to make everyone you play it in front of going to feel. But that's the point. Like, you're expressing and you're pushing these feelings on people. And that's kind of the point of these performances. So how often do you get an opportunity to play the loudest, most annoying sound you can hear in front of all these people? All you want to do is annoy them. This is your opportunity. Go up there and make these.
I've been to a few concerts like that, but it's not been performed by kids.
Like this, what a great idea.
I've always assumed they're trying to test my patience. Yeah, it is good. It's good. It's fun when it looks like they're sort of enjoying it and getting something out of it. Oh well, so hopefully they'll get to do their performance later in the year then.
We will see. We will see. I think the world is up in the air right now, and we'll see what happens when it comes back down. So before we finish up here, I think at the very beginning you touched briefly about your new stuff. And is it still the ATX line? That's still the new stuff?
It is. Yeah. So it's still. So I was showing you the PCBs that they're all final revision. I've got, actually, you can see boxes down there.
Mm-hmm.
That's all stock of different parts. That's the plastic lens that goes on top. That is the bit that goes above the PCB, but that's the bit that creates the shapes for the LEDs to shine through.
Oh, nice.
Anyway, there's just piles of stuff it's all starting to get ready to go, but there's still a lot of software to do for it until I'm complete. This is what I was saying was interesting with your new stuff, trying to hone it down onto something that was just going to be the thing to finish rather than it spiraling out of control, which is why I'm going to finish this one first. So this will be the first one out. But the difficult thing for me is because they're all part of a series,
mm-hmm.
you need to start almost with the full system.
Yeah.
And so I don't know how well you can see. That's the state of the full one. It's the control is disembodied from the keyboard at the moment. And I've been working on a new sound engine. There's lots of sound engines building up for them. We've got the Atmegatron. We've got lots of the originals from the Atmegatron. So the Atmegatron and the Auditron, the String Machine. I've been working on a couple of new ones, and this is one that I was working on recently. And I should explain for anyone watching, there is a bug which I've been working at since 9 this morning, where I've somehow screwed up the I2C bus that does all this communication, and it's dropping messages. So you may hear some stuck notes, but that obviously is going to be fixed. But I just had this random idea. The Korg M1, I think the original ROM in a Korg M1 is 4 megabytes.
Mm-hmm.
I've got absolute maximum of 16 kilobytes to fit samples in. The other, it's 32 kilobytes on the Atmega chip, but you need to allow half of that really just for operations of lights and CV inputs and stuff like that. So give yourself 16 kilobytes of. So I've got to get now 2 megabytes of that is the piano. So it was a 4 megabyte ROM in the. I wonder if I play it. I love all this. So with all this lockdown, sort of slowly learning about all the new technology and Zoom and getting things to come through streaming. So the first thing I did was find a way to convert the ROM so I could hear it. I'll try playing it. It's quite fun because it program 1, and then if I try playing that, does that come through for you?
Nope.
Oh.
I can hear it.
Is that coming through?
Yes.
It's not coming through for me.
Yep. Okay.
And is that going through all the piano tones? So
that's what's doing, yeah.
And then it should go through a few more.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, so half of that's the piano. So 2 megabytes of that is the piano. And I had to get that down to 13 kilobytes. So I just thought it was an interesting challenge to see how I could do it. And I've kind of done it. It's crunchy. It is definitely crunchy compared to the original. And it sounds, it's been 8-bitified and compressed. But if I play that's sort of the middle, and then lower down. And then higher up. You get the idea.
that's amazing. And you played this for me before we started streaming, and we had a bit of this conversation before we went live. And I said I have an old Ensoniq EPS with a classic, that old classic Ensoniq sampled piano sound. But I've since downsampled it, and it reminds me of this so much. It has so much more character, and it does sound crunchy and all that aliasing that's in there. But I kind of think that's what I want, and that's, if it's not an exact copy of a piano, add some character to it and make it interesting. And I think this does exactly that. It doesn't sound, certainly not through the what I can hear through the Skype call here. It sounds like it has a lot of life to it. It's a lot of vibe. It doesn't sound flat or dull, and I think that's really all you want. I think, and it's boggling my mind that you got that in 13K. That's crazy to me.
Do you want to know how I did it?
Yes, I do.
So what I realised, the M1, the reason it's half of the 2 megabytes is because they do entire piano note samples. It's very unusual back then. Just do, the whole note of, I think there's 13 notes. I think it was 13 different notes. Interestingly, lots around the middle where you're more likely to be playing. So there's lots of different samples around the middle and less at the bottom and the top. Mm-hmm. What I realized was the things that tell you it's a chord game on piano is the attack. So if I can get the attack to fit in, then that will be half the battle. So that does fit in. But just the initial note, that's enough to, that's a chord game on piano when you hear that. And then the rest of it, I was like, well, I can't sample the whole thing. That's completely out. What about if I take wavetables? So if you just do one wavetable, that's not going to be enough. It would just go like that. It would sound rubbish. So what I did was I created a little application to take every sample and then take the first wavetable, the second, the fourth, the 8th, the 16th, the 32nd, the 64th, because the further along the wave you get, the less you care about the fidelity, because chances are you stop playing the note anyway if it's short. And then what it does is it loops those back. So it loops the first one once, the second one twice, the fourth one 4 times, and so on. And then does a crossfade as it goes between each one. So that's how it fits in. You do that for all the different 13 samples, you lower bit rates and things here and there, and it just fits in.
Wow.
But it took a lot of goes to work out what was important. It was important to have the sample rate high. It was important to keep that high at the expense of other things. So there's about 4 or 5 versions where I juggle parameters. And I don't know, a lot of people are saying why. Probably say why. I don't know. It's a challenge. I thought it would be fun.
If there's a mountain there, you got to climb it. And clearly you've climbed this mountain.
Yeah. And there's also another one exciting module that's going to come up, which will be an expander. Again, it's just stuff to keep me interested, because if I was just diagnosing the drop messages on the I2C bus for the last 3 years, I think I would have I'll be put away by now. I've got to find other things that make it interesting. So this will be one of the expander modules. So this is the full synth, which has 8 modules in it. But the one I'll be releasing first only has 2 voice cards, and you'll be able to expand another 6. And I don't know if you'll be able to. I can't even begin to get that close enough.
Okay.
Anyway, that chip there is very close to the chip that's in an Atari and that kind of thing.
Oh, okay.
So we're going to be doing an expander card with a completely different sound, and not Atmega based, but all part of the same system. So you can expand your existing synth to have a different sound, completely different sounding chip. I wanted again. I was trying to get this working for today, but just didn't quite manage to get it ready in time. I was waiting on one component. It arrived at 2 p.m. and by that point, I already was up to my neck in this other issue, so it didn't happen. But next time, next time. So I've been working on that as well. And the other thing was these drums. So that's the bit of promo that I need to do before we finish. So if there's any Ossitron owners out there, if you go to my website to the Ossitron downloads page, so I think that's support Ossitron downloads, I've uploaded 5 new drum sets, and I've got 2 of them running. Is that coming through all right?
Yeah, sounds great.
That's the Yamaha RX11.
Ooh, I like that.
Okay, and then the other one is a Mother 32 samples, which was supplied by an Ossitron owner that emailed me. Don't know what these other. Anyway, that's just 2 of them. Then there's other ones on there. So if you've got Ossitron and you've got the accessories pack for the Ossi drum, you can download it and get those new drum kits on there.
They sound like they're definitely worth downloading and checking out. They sound really good. I like the Mother 32 sounds. That was cool.
Yeah,
the Yamaha sounds were good too.
They've come out really well. It's funny when you mix the analog, take the analog source and then stick it through. One of them's a Roland CR78, and that was really interesting. It's often quite a challenge with the analog because a lot of them are noise based, and to do noise based things and getting that down to 11 kilohertz 8-bit, you often end up with silence because it doesn't have the sample rate to do it. But these ones just work really well. They all went straight in. They sound great. So yeah, they were his samples. I should give him a credit actually on the website for his samples. He said I could put them on. It's all been cleared.
Cool. Well, I think it's been a pleasure hanging out with you and a pleasure sort of catching up with you and seeing what you're doing. It's a bummer we can't go out and have a beer at Seabase this year at Super Booth. But there's always next year, right? I hope. Yeah.
It'll definitely. I will definitely be there next year. That's for sure. So,
let's ask. Is there anybody in the chat room that has any questions for Paul? I know you guys were saying in the chat room that a bunch of you hadn't really heard too much or hadn't heard of Soulsby. Didn't know much about it. So does anybody have any questions for Paul about the gear he makes? Paul, do you have an estimated time on when this stuff is going to start shipping? I know that's a loaded question. I feel bad saying it because I hate when people ask me that stuff. But for the people that are curious, like me, do you know when this stuff is going to start shipping? And I know the world's sort of on fire right now. Are you thinking summer? Are you thinking fall?
Well, I mean, the plan was to have the Atmegatron 2 shipping for Super Booth.
Okay.
Obviously, that's not going to happen. Also, I did take my foot off the gas quite a bit when I realized it wasn't going to happen. And there's still a couple of hurdles to overcome in terms of, there's so much that's here already that could just be made. But, things like the cases need to be made up, and I need to get back in touch with the company that does that to just check if they're still going to work and stuff. I don't know that yet. So that needs to be done. The side panels, big discussion on what to make the side panels out of, whether it was going to be walnut, like all the other synths I do, but price of walnut's gone up a lot. So looking at trying to do stuff with plywood possibly, but that's all still at very early stage. Like all the companies I was going to be looking at using for that, they're all on lockdown. So no go with that. So, it's really hard to say, but I'd certainly aim for summer. But I'm working on it every day at the moment. But when there's a company that's simply not operating, it's that and it's an essential part, then there's nothing you can do. You're then waiting on that company.
No, I know what you
mean.
mean.
Let's say summer. Let's hope for summer.
Summer sounds great. I know I feel the same way. We have 2 products right now that are in the very end of the production process, and you kind of feel like you're swimming in sand a little bit. Like doesn't matter what you do, you don't move at all as far as getting these things out the door. We were so close, and we got a call. We got most of our products are 2 PCBs. You have the UI PCB, and then you have the PCB with whatever analog circuitry is on there. So they sent us the UI PCB so we could do the assembly of the panels and the knobs and all that. And that was great. But then we got an email saying, hey, guess what? We are now shut down for the next foreseeable future. Your stuff will be, obviously it's not coming. So it's okay. And so, we have everything else sitting at the shop, and it's like, well, I guess it'll ship when it ships. And I think there's a lot of that going. It's not just, we don't have this, we're not the only people with this problem, and we're certainly not, complaining about it, but it's kind of the reality of companies like us that right now, because we use small vendors to do this stuff, we're all in the same boat. If I'm working from home, I'm assuming all of my vendors are working from home as well. So it's tough, but it kind of is what it is. So I've stopped saying, we were hoping to be shipping before Super Booth, and now I'm just telling people, you know what? I'll let you know 2 weeks before they start shipping, and I have no idea when that is, and it kind of is what it is. But
you can only do what you can do. There's if there's critical parts in the chain and you can't get the parts, there's nothing you can do really.
No.
So yes, I think we'll aim for something. See. I'll just keep an eye on it. I'm going to try and do this virtual Super Booth that's possibly in the pipeline. I'll do a proper update video on that for to sort of tell people where I am with it and show what's working and what isn't.
I think all of our videos are going to be the same thing. It's like, well, it's done. It'll ship when it ships. I don't know. You just loop that in every video. I think we'll all be saying just about the same thing. But yeah, I suspect because everyone's kind of in the same boat. I don't feel we're going to get too much pushback on that. I don't make mission critical. I don't make life-saving gear. So I feel like focus on that stuff and come back to us when it's time. And that's okay. Yeah. And in the meantime, I will just keep doing these live streams to entertain people as best I can.
That's a great idea. It's good. And it's good. It's given me something to work towards, getting that little piano demo and the drums up and running. And then with the Super Booth video, again, I'm gonna try and keep pushing, so I have something to show for that as well. It's good to have these deadlines. Otherwise, we're on lockdown we're on week 3 of a 12-week lockdown over here. So it's good to have little points of structure.
No, and it's important to have focus. I have noticed we're on week 4 of a lockdown that keeps pushing. Every time we get close, they say, "Oh, it's going to be another 2 or 3 weeks." So I had just assumed now this is what we're doing. But it's good to have something to focus on, and it's good to have something to work on. Otherwise, I'm going to drive my wife and children absolutely insane.
Yeah. No, it's good. It's good to good idea. I think it was a good move.
So anyway, Paul,
we should do it again if we're definitely do it again if we're still here in another few weeks and we're still on lockdown. Give me a shout. We should have another chat because
absolutely. anytime you want to come on, I'll have you. We'll just turn it on and go live. We'll just talk amongst ourselves. And if anyone watches, more on them. Well, thank you for joining me. Is there anything else you want to plug while I got you here? Is there anything else you want to point people in your direction? I put a link in the description below to the Soulsby website. And on there, there's actually, on your website, there's a nice video on the ATX page of the Soulsby Synths website. There's a nice video that you did with Gaz running through the new ATX products. And I watched it earlier today just to sort of, because I had seen this stuff, but I saw it last year at Superbooth, so I wanted to sort of catch back up. So it's you and Gaz at Superbooth 19 going through, and it's about 20 minutes long. It's really interesting, and it's because you're using the gear and you're showing the gear in the video, it gives people a nice explanation and maybe catches them up if they're a little confused based on the conversation we had today. That will put them exactly where they are, and it'll all kind of make sense, though. So I would definitely recommend people, if you have time or if you're interested in Soulsby stuff, and you absolutely should be, check out the video because it really gives a nice overview of the new stuff you're working on.
Yeah, the idea last year was to show the expandability, that how all the parts are interchangeable between Atmegatron 2, Atmegatron, and the individual modules. It's all the parts are part of one ecosystem. And so I really pushed that last year, tried to sort of push it, because I felt it started, the first sort of time I showed it was 2018, and I think it was hard to get all the info across that first time. So and Gaz has been following it from the start. Each time, each event, we do a little thing. It's been great. It's like sort of following the journey. So yeah, I have to sort something out for whenever. Well, maybe do an interview with him. I don't know, some kind of interview over Skype or something. Who knows?
I'd recommend. I interviewed Gaz about a month and a half ago, maybe. He was on this show, and he was talking about his journey, the beginnings of his journey into Modular, and a really nice conversation. Gaz is another person that I'm really bummed that I'm not going to get to hang out with at Superbooth this year.
He's also good for sort of super booth after party chats and things.
Yes, he is.
So I'm gonna. These are the things I'm gonna miss so much. It's all coming. We're getting so close to that date now. It's starting to get become.
It is, and well, Superbooth especially is a bummer because for me, you do the business during the show, but Superbooth is really, it's more than just a show, and it really is from the moment that the show stops at 6 o'clock or whatever time the day is over and they close the booths down. For me, that's really when it begins, and it becomes fun because then you stick around, you watch the last couple performances of the day, you have a couple beers at the show, and then you go to C-Base and you're there until the next day, essentially. But you have these fantastic conversations, and you really have these interesting then connections with people, and you find out maybe a little bit more about people than just this guy makes synthesizers. You realize, no, these people have other interests, and they're really similar to the things I'm interested in. And it becomes, you make friends with these people, and it's a great way to catch up on a year-to-year basis. And it's going to be a bummer, but I'm glad I got to talk to you tonight here on the internet virtually, because that's the only option we have. And you should come back in a couple weeks and we'll do it again, because it was great catching up with you, and it was a ton of fun talking to you. So, Paul, thank you very much for joining me. Thank you, everybody in the chat room, for hanging out. What do I have coming up that I want to plug? Oh, next week, I have Tuesday at 8 p.m. Eastern time. I know I keep bouncing between 8 p.m. Eastern and 8 p.m. Greenwich Mean Time, but this coming week, next week, will be 8 p.m. Eastern time. I'm going to talk to the legendary one and only Suit and Tie Guy, which should be really, really fun. If you don't know who Suit and Tie Guy is, he is a fixture in the synthesis community. Is a really interesting dude. He does some really, really cool stuff. But we'll get into that next week with him. So check that out. That'll be Tuesday at 8 p.m. Eastern. There'll be links and all that stuff at some point somewhere. I don't know. What else do I have going on? Oh, I'm going to do a couple more patch labs this week. They sort of pop up when I have the time. Usually they're late It's limiting the number of people that are going to end up being able to watch. But over the weekend, this past weekend, we did 2, and they ended up being 3.5 hours each. But they're super fun, so I'm going to keep doing those this week. There'll probably be 2 or 3 of those. And thank you, everybody, in the chat room for hanging out. I'll see you at the next thing. Once again, Paul, thank you very much, and I will talk to you guys later. See you later, everybody.
Yeah, bye.